Let's go ahead and have a talk here about catching ourselves in what they call the liminal moments. Has anybody heard of liminal moments before? So it's the moment between stimulus and response. So stimulus, I'm hungry. Response, let's order Chinese. Boom. No awareness, just did it. Now I'm not to deal with the outcome, I have to deal with the consequences later, right? So what we want to do in that moment between stimulus and response is called the liminal. It's like a transitional moment, right? So what we're going to chat about here is catching ourselves in that space so we can create the outcome, create a favorable outcome, and not have an unfavorable outcome because we didn't put any awareness in our liminal moments. Make sense, guys? Is everybody following me here? Cool. All right, so let's talk about it here. I already spilled the beans on this, but so basically, a liminal moment is the moment between events, okay? AKA the moment between stimulus and response. Example, someone cuts you off in traffic and that's the stimulus, and the response is to roll my window down or jam my middle finger against the front windshield and tell this guy to fuck off, right? That's the knee-jerk response without any awareness. All that's really doing is creating stress hormones for me and putting me on edge. Doesn't change that guy's life at all. Instead, I can get in the habit of catching these moments. I can pause and I can allow my better judgment to come into play and decide to just let it roll off my back, take a deep breath, whatever. That guy cut me off. I've cut people off. It happens. It's LA, whatever. Right? Okay, so how does this apply to my fitness and to my weight loss? How does catching myself between stimulus and response apply to what we're trying to do here? Essentially, what we're talking about is awareness, right? So catching yourself in that liminal moment, not liminal moment, is the essence of awareness, right? And we can all agree that awareness is applicable to everything we do in life. So when we cultivate awareness by creating space between stimulus and response. So instead of conditionally reaching for your phone as soon as it dings, right? We like train ourselves like Pavlov's dogs, the bell rings and then we start to salivate. Our phone lights up and we look at it. Our phone lights up and we look at it. What is that doing? It's creating just a really bad habit where there's zero awareness between a stimulus and a response, which applies to other things that we do in life. And B, it's getting us out of our state of flow. So if we're at work and we're trying to focus and we're out of the corner of our eye, there's a study where even having your phone on your desk drains like 20% of your focus just by having it in periphery. So by simply just putting it in a drawer and putting it in undisturbed for the hour that you need to focus on the thing is going to increase your productivity by 20-30%. So there's a little hack for you. But really what we're doing is we're creating space and awareness between stimulus and response. So we're the ones in the driver's seat choosing when to engage with whatever it is that is trying to get our attention, right? That's a different talk for a different day, but that's essentially another discussion on boundary setting, which we can get into at some point as well. So instead of conditionally, I already said all that. Okay, great. So the more that we insert awareness between stimulus and response, the more positive feedbacks we create that give us traction towards our goal. Okay, so let me try to rephrase that. So the more that we stop, put our phone on do not disturb, catch ourselves before we flip the person off, pause for a second and think through sodium levels, calories before we just order takeout or whatever it is. The more we do this, the more traction we start to create, because what we're doing is essentially creating a positive feedback loop. Okay. So in other words, a negative feedback loop, it would be straight from stimulus to response to unfavorable outcome. Wah, wah. Oh, I did it again. That's a negative feedback loop. Most people have accumulated 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 more pounds of body fat because of a series of negative feedback loops that they may not be aware of that have basically turned into like an operating system in their life. And so we can't expect ourselves to get rid of those. They're there with us, right? It's conditional, it's cultural, it's family, it's weird. It's all in, it's in us. What we can do is we can disproportionately outweigh them with positive ones that we can create by inserting awareness between our stimulus and between our response. So one of my favorite ways to do this is the 10-minute rule. So the 10-minute rule is how we're gonna catch yourself in that liminal moment, okay? It's the moment after you get triggered is when we're gonna insert this 10-minute rule. So don't try to tell yourself you're not gonna do something. Now this is gonna be more towards like a craving or like an impulse or like like if you've ever like, really tried to pull back on drinking, right? You know that if you've drank for a few days in a row, your body is going to start to crave that alcohol again, right? It's like you go through little mini withdrawal, and then it's very easy for your mind to rationalize having another one that night, right? Even if it's not like blackout drunk, but just the consistency and the frequency of drinking on a nightly basis. So to break the pattern, it's not realistic to say you're not going to do it, because every person who is in that state wakes up in that morning and says, I'm not going to do it, but then they do it again that night. So clearly telling yourself you're not going to do it isn't going to work. So instead what you do is you just give yourself space to feel it, to feel the emotion. Don't say you're not going to do it. Tell yourself you're going to do it. I'm going to have that drink. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it in 10 minutes. And it's as literally as brass tacks as that. You tell Siri to set a timer for 10 minutes, and you just go for it. I'm gonna have that drink as soon as that buzzer goes off. I'm gonna have that drink. But instead, what happens? That 10 minutes goes off, and you go, well, I guess the urge passed, the craving passed. You've created awareness, you've created space, you've bought into that liminal moment. And now you don't really want it anymore, right? So another example would be like your boss screams at you, your boss tells you that you suck. Trigger, right? What do? I'm gonna try to regain some control, even if it's damaging. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna eat ice cream. And what is the outcome there? Bloated, shame, hopelessness, right? Vicious cycle, negative feedback loop, stimulus, response, outcome, right? Instead, we insert that 10-minute rule and we say, I'm going to eat that ice cream. I'm just going to set a timer for 10 minutes and I'm going to dive in. And we sit there with it and we let that initial wave of emotion, that initial craving just move through us and pass. And then when that timer goes off, chances are you're probably not going to want it. You've retaken control. And instead of creating this negative feedback loop where every time you get triggered, your instant response is to commiserate with food or alcohol. Now we're creating space around it and rewriting your operating system, creating a positive feedback loop where you can get triggered and still keep your commitments to your health and fitness and be unflappable when it comes to other people's impression on you, right? And that's the essence of creating this new operating system, these new positive feedback loops. And the outcome, of course, is confidence, control, flat tummy, all the good stuff, right? So by simply creating a moment of space, the liminal moment between stimulus and response, we get to insert awareness, diffuse the impulse, which in turn creates a favorable outcome, okay? And I hinted on this earlier, but let's just go ahead and dig a little bit deeper in here. So we have negative and we have positive feedback loops, right? So like the thermostat is a feedback loop, right? So the thermostat sets 72 degrees. As soon as the air temperature in the room drops down to 71, thermostat clicks on, feedback loop initiated, and it turns the furnace on, and then it blows hot air until the temperature rises above 72, and then it shuts off. That's a feedback loop, right? Your thyroid is a feedback loop, right? Your thyroid is releasing hormones depending on calorie levels and activity, trying to regulate your metabolism. So so there's all kinds of like biological feedback loops. But then there's also psychological feedback loops, right? So another like a psychological feedback loop is like what we talked about earlier. A lot of us get conditioned through childhood to, you don't get dessert until you finish that plate, right? Think about that one. So you don't get to eat more until you eat more. And then all of a sudden we're 40 years old and we're wondering why we just can't not have dessert after dinner, right? Well, you've created a feedback loop around that system for your whole life, and there's very little awareness around it. So by inserting awareness between stimulus and response, it creates a favorable outcome, a positive feedback loop, which reinforces your ability to have control over your life. This sense of control gives you the confidence to accomplish bigger and bigger goals for yourself. Okay, so something as simple as giving yourself that 10-minute rule before you indulge, and then deciding afterwards if you're going to do it or not, is just a baby stepping stone for other things that we can accomplish in our life, right? Because the way you do anything is the way you do everything. I really truly believe that if you can handle nutrition and participate with your health and your fitness, that is a microcosm for everything else that we do in our life. So just do this real quick here, and we'll do this real quick here because I might have a little OCD, but that's all right. Where was I? Bam. There we are. Cool. So negative feedback loop, other side of that coin. Okay, so we talked about positive feedback loops. We understand what can happen in our life if we start stacking our wins, baby. We start getting positive feedback loops. We're in control. But now let's understand the opposite side of that coin. We have a negative feedback loop. So awareness is always going to result in some sort of positive outcome. Unawareness probably going to result in most likely negative ones, unless you get lucky sometimes. So without inserting awareness and simply going straight from a trigger, a stimulus, to our conditioned response, to our knee-jerk response, it creates unfavorable outcomes and negative feedback loops. These negative feedback loops leave you feeling like life is out of your control, which makes your goals feel further and further out of reach, and essentially creating this sense of hopelessness, right? Because it's all boiled down to, are we catching that moment between stimulus and response? The bottom line is you can get rid of your baggage, your AKA your negative feedback loops, but you, let me rephrase that, excuse me. You cannot get rid of your baggage. You can't get rid of these feedback loops. It's not like we're removing a tumor from your arm. It's in there, it's filed away, right? It's in your hard drive. So instead of trying to eradicate this or avoid it, just accept it. Hey, we got our dark side, man. You know, like we all got our demons. No one grew up perfect. Everyone's got their shit. We all have these things that we have to bring with us into adulthood. We can't expect ourselves to not carry that baggage. But what we can do is we can disproportionately outweigh them with positive feedback loops. Okay, so you've been stacking negative ones into the point to where you need to make a change. Don't expect those to not exist. Instead, let's start stacking positive feedback loops that disproportionately outweigh the negative ones, right? And by catching yourself in these liminal moments and inserting more awareness between your stimulus and your response, you're essentially rewriting your operating system, right? Does that make sense, guys? So, I thought I had another slide. I guess that's it. So that's the idea, guys, is like, look at it in that way. Look at it as, okay, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be this massive sea change in events, but what it is going to be is starting right now, today, being honest with yourself, examining your choices, and just trying to give a pause before you just do something, right? So live an examined life, in other words. And it doesn't mean like write this autobiographical dossier on your life and your childhood. And I almost feel like that's worse. You know, and people like you can visit Pain Town, but don't live there. Understand what this comes from, but then really it's just like creating these positive feedback loops by simply just inserting a little bit of awareness between your choices, and then watching these favorable outcomes start stacking on themselves. Before you know it, that's just going to be your new normal. Okay. All right, crew. That was a good one. Thank you guys for jumping in. Thursday, that means tomorrow's Friday. So I don't know about you guys, but Fridays are when I typically, if I'm gonna go off the rails, it's gonna be on the weekends. I don't know about you guys. Does anybody have anything coming up this weekend? Nope, you guys are all just gonna be at home meditating. Cool, no, that's great. That's what I like about you guys. All right, just think about it, plan ahead, prepare. You can have anything you guys want, just not everything you want. So figure out how to make it fit into your calorie targets and jump on that scale Monday morning and be proud of yourself. Okay, have a good one, guys. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.